my friends, I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and we are once again looking at Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition. This is the Player's Handbook Rules Supplement, the complete Barbarian's Handbook. And once again, this cost me 18 bucks when I bought it. Not sure exactly what year it was, 95, 96. Would have cost £11 if you'd have bought it in the UK. So, like all the other basic classes that came in the Player's Handbook, they expanded on them and found a bit more ways to find better detail, because some classes are less understood than others, and it's been my experience, especially with new players, there's a lot of players who come in and have their version or view of how a particular character class should look and function and act. And not everybody's the same, which is a good thing. We don't want, carbon copy Conan the Barbarians for every answer to everything that comes out there. So this here was by Rick Swan, published by TSR back in the day, and 1995, right? And let's see, we've got the Barbarian Heritage about the book. There's some great artwork in these books. I believe the artwork really pops and stands out and helps. First edition Barbarian differences, proficiencies, the Barbarian fighter, the requirements for it, level advancement, armor and weapons, movement, physical abilities. Because a lot of people, when they think of Barbarian, either they think of a berserker, a Viking berserker, for example, which isn't technically a barbarian, and or the Conan Barbarian meme, and which is fine, it's understandable. But if you look at the genre and you look through literature down the years, I mean, you'll find that the barbarians come in many forms. And not all barbarians are barbarians. It's just that they're labeled such or viewed as such because they're less than civilized, or they live out beyond, quote, frontier, etc. So we're going to break it down and specify. So a barbarian is part of a barbarian tribe, but by default, everybody in the tribe a barbarian? I mean, as in the class, or they have other roles that would not make them, they would be a barbarian cleric. Well, in this case, we got one called the Shaman. So it gives the requirements for it, level advancement, movements, armor, weapons, etc., spells. So we had the Barbarian the Fighter, the Barbarian Shaman, which would both be integral parts of any barbarian tribe, and serve as a role as a cleric, because they also have the ability to turn undead. Homeland terrain advantages. Choosing a homeland terrain, so having your barbarian specifically be a hill barbarian or a mountain barbarian kind of thing is what they're going for. Talk about alignment, talk about magic. The barbarian divides magic into two categories. First, homeland magic includes spells common to his native territory. In game terms, this category includes low-level clerical spells of the spheres available to barbarians. And then there's the rest, right? Not all barbarians are totally terrified of magic, I guess is what they're trying to get you to understand. But there's magic and there's magic. Outworld wizards and priests, magical items, unwanted items. If a barbarian comes across an item he doesn't want, he has several options. Leave it alone, simply walk around it, ignore it, and feign indifference. Give it away, get rid of it. Here's incentive for the barbarian to be part of the group, I guess. The talisman replacement, money, barter, free trade economy, campaign economics. We got languages, and we got basic hand language here for some sign language for that a lot of frontier people tend to acquire or to construct, so they can communicate not just amongst themselves but with other people that don't talk their specific dialect. Another advantage of this sort of thing is the ability to communicate quietly. So a lot of rogues and scouts and certain other elements have mastered similar types of languages, in part because it allows them to communicate with each other without verbally giving them their position away. So we got more depth on languages, unique languages, which is optional, extra languages, barbarian strongholds, followers, reaction penalty, physical abilities, acquiring kits. Okay, so we got the fighter kits, which is a brush runner. So a fleet-footed brush runner lives the life of serenity, basking in the sun and chasing wild game on lushly vegetated plains. Long legs and leap body make him a natural athlete as he sprints with the speed of a cheetah and leaps with the grace of a gazelle. Excuse my cough. It talks about roles, armor issues, special hindrances and penalties. For example, obviously speed and agility is very important to a bush runner. So wearing a lot of armor is kind of a no deal. It causes numerous penalties for doing so. We have the Barbarian Brute. The most primitive barbarian, the Brute combines traits of both humans and animals. He's heavily built, thick bone with sloping skull, resting low on his neck and fang jaws. It sounds like he's more like a Neanderthal than just a pure brute. No sophistication. Answer is violence for everything. And we have a forest lord, and we have an islander, excuse me. Plains rider, islander as in from the islands, as in not a Highlander as in from Scotland. A ravager, the wizard slayer, dreamwalker. I had a player for a number of years that loves barbarians, and we don't get together and play these days. He's around. We just don't get together and play anymore. He's more focused on the video game stuff these days. Anyhow, he loved the barbarians. I mean, the bigger, the better. The more physically capable. That was his preference. He didn't have to overthink things. He just bashed things until it stopped moving. And he developed a character that got tormented and tweaked off on several occasions by punky mages, low-level mages, to the point where he indiscriminately would go after low-level magic users that were NPCs, and in one case he actually tried to kill a fellow player's character, just because he did not like his magic-y ways or something like that. Yeah, so this fit that guy's character pretty damn good at that point. So then we got cleric kits for the barbarian. In this case, there's the sword, the dream walker, the flame speaker. Somebody who's flame speaker, also known as a Mwanga, come from primitive tribes that worship fire, and has some abilities and advantages of doing this. Medicine man, medicine woman, the seer, the spiritist. Spiritist believes in the omnipresence of spirits. They inhabit people, animals, inanimate objects, trees, stones, the moon, forces of nature, wind, thunder, death, and have profound effects on the physical world. And they have the ability to interact with them. The witch man or Ulgo. Witch man or witch woman, also known as the Ulgo, is a self-appointed champion of righteousness. Believes that some men are contaminated with evil force called Malah that compels them to perform evil actions. The witch man enters the enemies of good by constructing and damaging clay dolls imbued with their Malah. Okay. I don't think we ever played one of those. That doesn't ring any bell. So I'll talk about creating new kits. Let me get into some more specific things. Combined proficiencies, multi-class barbarians, dual-class barbarians. That's one of the things that was always a bit of a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, or we just acknowledged that there was a possible conflict of interest when you're talking about multi-classing or dual-classing a character and just doing it. Or arguing over whether or not it was really a reality thing. So having a fighter barbarian, for example, is kind of a misnomer, because in a lot of aspects a barbarian is a fighter. They're just not as sophisticated. So I mean, but when we start getting into some really obscure things where we cross classes to the point where you say, are they really truly barbarians at this point? They're sophisticated, that maybe they've grown out of it or grown past it, or there's just something not quite civilized about a civilized barbarian. I mean, it's a matter of how you want to look at it. So compiled proficiencies, clarifications about agriculture, animal training, animal lore, goes on down through the alphabetical list. Most of these are in the handbook, the player's handbook. There's a few that are kind of unique to the class. New proficiencies: alertness, animal rending, armor crude, bartering. This was one that I carried over into a lot of campaigns, bartering, because there was a lot of players who wanted to haggle, and you really want to put a group of players on their ear. Limit the financial outwind or outfall. It's the Monty Hall is so tempting to just load up players, the players' characters with all kinds of insane amount of loot to make them literally the most wealthiest individuals in on the damn continent, and it's not hard to do without meaning to. And that should not. If you look at the general expenses and operational costs of the average individual in our quote, savage setting or Middle Ages setting, depending on how you view your campaign world. When they live off of copper pieces, and silvers are considered a lot, and gold is something you hoarded. Even the poorest person, if they considered themselves comfortable if they had a gold piece or two stashed away, they didn't need to get into it. But somebody's carrying 20,000 gold pieces in a bag of holding with another 15 million worth of gems and magic items and all kinds of other crap. Well, they're basically carrying the wealth, the equivalent wealth of a medium-sized kingdom, for Christ's sake, and that's not really practical. And not to mention, I think it detracts a lot from your game, especially if that becomes the norm. And so putting the players in a position where a lot of times money has limited value, because to the peasant farmer who's mostly barters and trades things, that's where this proficiency of bartering started to come into play, and it prompted the players to roll, as in put themselves in a position to work through the position without tossing rolled dice. So when you talk about storytelling or immersing yourself into a character, that's kind of part of that scenario, and you want to feed those things in to encourage the players to do it, and then reward them based on it. But don't reward them with experience and praise, or things like fame, as opposed to loot, because it just makes it a little bit more of a challenge. So we got boating, crude clothes making, danger sense, foraging, hiding, horde summoning, leadership, light sleeping, signaling. Yeah, see, so light sleeping was another one that came up a number of times, because every now and then you get a player my character sleeps with one eye open, which is fine. But what is that, and how does that portray as a mechanic, if you really want to know? So this gave us a little bit of an idea of how this would work. Lets the character receive the benefits of full night rest with 1 hour nap. Character must make a proficiency check before going to sleep. In the hour fully refreshed, you recover the same amount lost hit points you rested for 8 hours. Check fails, remains asleep, awaking as usual. So, I mean, it's, how light of a sleeper is your character? And how much control do you really have over your character? Soothsaying, weapon improvisation, crude weaponsmithing, wild fighting. Then we get into things like secondary skills and stuff like that, which have gone to more or less have gone to the wayside in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and 4th edition. seems to be a whole lot of really a move to get away from skill-based anything or to apply. And I know that in 5th edition they consolidated. They started it in 4th, so we have half as many skills, or we have as many skills, but they're shrunk into categories. And I made many arguments before in various videos that I feel that takes away from the fine-tuning and nuances of character development and character interaction with the world that they're interacting in. And what I mean is to think about taking the just lumping everything into athletics, when climbing it takes some athletics also takes some strength. It also takes some dexterity. I mean, it fits a specific niche and a role, but you narrow all that down to just one simple thing instead of being able to focus on some people being better than other people at certain things. I mean, I think it diminishes and takes away. It's a matter of flavor, taste, I guess. I mean, however you want to look at it. Talk about barbarians and forbidden armor, clothing and body decoration. So I know a lot of characters, or a lot of players who got their barbarians and they basically wanted to load them up with body tattoos and things like that. And there's some advantages and disadvantages to doing that. And not just in the society and the world setting, as the game master, as the storyteller, and you're spinning up this world. Perhaps like in Japan, tattoos represent a certain element of the Japanese society that's not necessarily accepted to be wandering around with them on display, as opposed to say in the islands that are out in the South Pacific and stuff, where body tattoos are extremely important socially and not as a status, but as a mark of progress of the person's life. So the person's story is emblazoned right there for you to see. And then there's the element of magic. And there's magical tattoos. They work similar to glyphs, and I don't remember where I seen the rule sets for it, but you basically tattoo magic spells to your body, and your body then gains the advantages as if they were imbued with it. So if you had a tattoo, for example, that was tattooed around your face and your eyes to give you that low light vision or night vision at night, what would that kind of look like? I mean, how fantastic or how brutal looking would such a tattoo need to be, and how much would it make you stand out in a normal situation? It's just like having resistance to magic or resistance to the elements or something as a tattoo, or the tattoos that operate in a limited fashion. So if you activate them either however the process may be to do that, and it gives you a limited duration boost to something, and then it takes 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever for it to reconstitute itself or to recharge, if you will. I mean, the options and opportunity there's quite a bit. So we talk about barbarians and transportation, land transportation, water transport, things like canoes, rafts, kayaks, palm boat, kufa, resembles an immense tub made of skim stretched over a lattice of reeds. Weapons of barbarians, penalties for crude weapons, barbarian versions of standard weapons, and we got some new weapons that we added that are more typical of what a barbarian tribe may or may not use, such as the bola. And forbidden weapons, things that are not supposed to, they shouldn't. New magical items. Oh yeah, right. Economics, social organization. So we talk about chapter 6 is barbarian cultures. So you want to have a barbarian, and they come from a tribe. And one of the most popular ones, aside from Conan, of course, would be Wolfgar from the Icewind Dale trilogy and other novels that are set in the Forgotten Realms. And Wolfgar was the consummate barbarian warrior fighter. I mean, he just was almost every nuance and character and stereotype that you could think of wrapped up in that character. And we watch him grow and develop and grow and become more tolerant in some aspects and even more adamant in others as he progressed. And he struggled. He goes through a number of terrible years where he's struggling with his identity and just what it is that he's supposed to do and anyway. So we see briefly a little bit of the tribe he comes from, and we know they're from the tribes of barbarians that roam the icy tundra in the very north of Faerun, and so we have an idea for social organization, how the economics would work, and for the most part, we're back to bartering, trading, and just providing technology. We got a primary model to work from: traditional hammered iron religion, advanced model, wherever that. Okay, some barbarians have mastered basics of smelting iron from raw ore. So barbarian religions, elements of faith, nature spirits, dreams, expressions of faith, idolatry, sacred words, rituals, charms and fetishes, taboos and superstitions. We got warfare, demographics, age, gender, barbarians on the outworld, exploration, quest, misfortune, radar. So these are campaign ideas or common traits. Outsiders, lovers of nature, uneducated, crude, simple, reverent, honorable. The barbarian's personality, a list of defining characteristics. Things like fearless, grim, homesick, proud, impulsive, playful, savage. Experience, the value of animal products. Determining values. If this, once again, I always point out to people, the Dungeons & Dragons specifically, as the 800-pound gorilla, is a massive system, and it is crunch beyond crunch, with extra servings of crunch that's been sweetened with additional sweetened chunks of crunch, and it's been refined, it's been beaten up, it's been tore apart, it's been restructured. It's every version, every new set that comes out has some kind of adjustments in it. And so to say that you can pretty much ask just about any, how does my character do this, or how do we do this, or what is that? There's a good chance somewhere, someplace in one of these versions is the answer that you might want to be finding. So in this case, how much is a carcass worth? How much are the organs worth? How much would poison coming out of a specific type of animal work? Things like snakes, scorpions, and spiders. You don't think about it, but the truth is that's especially in magic as components, but also in the number of potion making, so in alchemy as well. There's always a market for things like that. I remember when I was younger, and we were always hungry for loot, and magic creatures, exotic creatures. We couldn't try to. We started trying to trap and catch some of them so we could sell them. And if we had to kill them, we would butcher them and try to figure out what makes them. How much is a black dragon's eyeballs worth to somebody? That's kind of morbid, but it's the truth, and this is one of those sections that kind of go on that. So we determine the values of carcasses, organs, poisons, teeth and claws, horns and antlers, and feathers. Right? Alright, so right here, the eye from a beholder is worth 50 gold pieces to the right person. I mean, where the skin of a bear is worth 500 gold pieces to the right person. So we talk about ettercat poison, 1,000 gold pieces per ounce. A giant lizard skin is worth 6 gold pieces. I mean, you could have a campaign if it's just you and your buddy. Your buddy could be a quote mountain man, a mountain preferring barbarian, whatever, who goes out and basically makes his living as skin and trap and going out and fighting and trapping exotic and evil things, and then hawking their parts off and selling it. I mean, geez, we look through here, some of the stuff, a wolf pelt is worth 3 gold pieces, where troll's blood is worth 400 gold pieces, and it doesn't give you an exact amount of So if you say a vial of troll's blood is worth 400 gold pieces, well, there's somebody out there. The carapace of a Tarrasque is worth 20,000 gold pieces, and the underbelly of a Tarrasque is worth 5,000. You know, there you go. I mean, what is 20,000 gold pieces? That sounds like a lot until you start looking at your magic items and weapons, and armor, and things like that, and the value of those items. So if you were to try to purchase that outright, which I've always thought was absurd, you should never be able to walk into any weapon shop anywhere and buy a +5 Holy Avenger or Vorpal weapon. Those things should be rightfully extremely rare and in the possession of some people or beings that don't want to give them up, and you have to take them and acquire them, or they should be something that has meaning. So, excuse me, your character stumbles through the woods after an all night of being chased by a group of bandits or something like that, and you come across the proverbial sword in the stone. It turns out to be a +5 Holy Avenger, and so on and so forth. Let the story begin. So, it's just kind of one of those things where we look at it. So, 10 rabbit pelts are worth a gold piece. That was another thing that where some of this came into play, was when you used to call it rat tail hunting or rat hunting. Excuse me, damn it. I don't know why I've yawned. I'm perfectly fine. Physically, anyway. So, and I lost my track of thought. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So some of the early massive multi-online player blah blah, these were text-based games. Everything was text-based. You read and then you typed your responses or how you interacted with the environment. It was still a game and stuff. Don't get me wrong. But at the very first level, the only way you could really advance was to go out and hunt rat. You went after rat tails, and you bundle them up, and so many of them's worth so much, and you gain you level yourself up a level or two, to give you a fighting chance to deal with everything else outside of town. It's just like gathering herbs and spell components and things like that. You would pile them up in a bundle and then you would sell them. I mean, that's kind of the whole point. So the same thing goes with first level, low level characters. They got to go out, and one of their first adventures might be defending a village from a pack of wolves. It's just straight up normal wolves. Still can kill you and cause you problems. And if you manage to kill half of them, drive the other half off, well, we now know, like I said, you can come in here and make 3 gold pieces per pelt. Right? So, right, it is what it is. Anyway, there you go. That's the Barbarian's Handbook. I'm Rick, and you're not. Till next time.